FS, um, and hopefully you guys can be with me all the way throughout. So without further ado, again, I'm not the greatest. It's my first real video, so let's see what we can do here. Um, and yeah, so introduce you to the car. So there we go. There's the FS. Unfortunately, I hit a brick wall, as I explained in the video, so that completely severed out the bottom there. Then on this side, I broke the steering knuckle down, or the lower suspension arm down there, but all in all, she's alright. When it comes to swag, I've bought the four-wheel drive upgrade kit, which I'm going to be putting in today. The suspension bits that I broke, necessary to change. So hopefully, once I'm doing that, once I've got everything open, I can change some bits out. I've also got a kill switch to fit. With the kill switch, we've also got a new 3-channel receiver that I need to put in as well to allow the kill switch to work. I run most of my cars on a FS GT3B, and that is what I usually use to go out. So introduce you to the pack. So Sabertooth. Under the hood of this one is a XR8 ESC and a 2350 kV Trackstar 4-pole brushless motor. I'm hoping that to run that on 4S, but it's 6S capable, so we're looking at some serious speed there. Then a more standard Sabertooth. Originally I got this to be just a backup car for if this one broke, so I got this one, but it's become a project of its own. My BSR Rally, stock standard, nothing much done to it apart from some grippy tyres on there. You might in a future video see this one turn to a GTR or GT Skyline body shell, because I'm looking at messing about with that a bit. My son's car, in one of my other videos you would have seen this lose a wheel, so I've replaced the wheels. However, while I was doing that, it lost a hub at the back. I have got replacements for that, so hopefully again in another video we can possibly see that one being replaced. So there's a fleet. There is one more car coming today, an FTX Bugster. That's got some drive shaft issues. I'll be sorting them out. I have bought some replacement parts. One being, so FTX Bugster has dog bones front and back. However, if you buy the Carnage, which is what it's based on, you get CVDs in the pack, or in the car. So what I'll be doing today is I'll be checking the drive shafts all the way around, and hopefully, if I can, put the CVDs in the front, and if the dog bones in the back need replacing, I've got some dog bones for that too. As I said, hubs for the DHK Optimus, so there's that. What else have I got in a swag? New front bumper. If you buy them from Wheelspin Models, there's an upgraded part which doesn't include that little bit there, but I find it doesn't help with the stability not having that bit, so I've got that. This part is chicken's teeth to get hold of. It's just a travel cup for the front C hub. Just allows the hub to move freely in the steering, but almost impossible to buy in the UK. Everyone's out of stock. More hubs, can never have too many. Ooh, this one comes with a pin. Again, chicken's teeth to get hold of those pins. I've tried sourcing them externally because I broke one. So, good to see that the pack actually included it. However, only the one seemed to include the pin. Same packaging. 83711 includes pin. 83711, no pin. What else have I got? Servo Horn. Don't know exactly how this is going to fit into the FS, but upgrade part. And to introduce you to the four-wheel drive kit. Now, the FS 350 30.5cc has a two-wheel drive setup. Back wheels, as standard, are driven by some semi-slick, almost gripless tyres. These are the standard Baja tyres being put on there, so it is a direct swap, powered by a 30cc engine. It says FCM on it. I don't know exactly what that stands for, but I've had this out in bits. FCM is the maker of that particular engine, but any 4-bolt 30cc motor will fit straight in there, so maybe in the future you will see me changing that to a more common engine. In there, a 60cc fuel tank, quite good. It reckons in the brochure an hour's runtime without any issues, but I think I've done 2 tanks with this motor, and I've had about 4 hours runtime on that. Performance tuned pipe doesn't come as standard with the car, so that's been upgraded. I've got a standard Chinese carb in there. I know some people will kill me for standard Chinese carbs, but that will be upgraded to a Walbro round about the same time that I changed the air filter to a nice CNC one. All in all, nice car. Everything's good. Set up in there, if you can't see it, but you will once I have it open. You can see the center drivetrain there. On the front of that, you attach a little cup. That cup then through a front drive shaft. This is quite thick, actually. This is almost 8mm thick, that, so almost indestructible. Goes into the diff housing through this. All enclosed diff comes in the kit. This I bought from China. However, if you go to Conrad in Germany, they do this sealed oil diff for 53 quid. So I have a spare now. I also bought the internal gears from Nitrotech. These are 30 quid for the gears. From Conrad in Germany, they were 22 quid. However, I bought them with this kit, same supplier, called TS Racing or TS something. I paid 9 quid for them, so now I'm going to be replacing the internal diff. We'll see later on in the video. When you buy this kit from Nitrotech, this bit here looks very similar to the 1/10 scale type CVD, so it comes with a shaft and a threaded bit at the end. However, having looked in there, I would almost certainly say it should be something like this. So we'll see how that works further on in the video. But that's an introduction to the four-wheel drive kit. I've made a massive mess here on my table. I'm going to apologise, this ain't going to be orthodox, but we're going to go for it. Apologies while I flip the camera, do the work here to get the camera. You might go blind for a bit. There we go. Can I get a amen? Let's see, sorry. You're taped to my door frame, so obviously have to invest in a camera mount if I'm going to be doing this often. There we go. So guys, just to reiterate, I am on Facebook, Total Control RC. I am on multiple platforms, Twitter. On Twitter I am RC_total. On Facebook I'm Total Control RC. You're on YouTube now, you can see that's Total Control RC as well. I'm just a dad of three. This is my house, this is not a shed or anything. It's a dad of three who just enjoys having a little fun with cars. I will apologise somewhere in this video. I'm expecting my family to come back, so you might see my kids run about, but hopefully I can be done and dusted with this repair in double quick time. It is after all just plug and play. I just want to secure you to the door frame so you guys don't fall. There we go. So let's start. Straight out the box, a few clips everywhere. I will say quite a strange design of the FS is once you put the performance pipe on, you can't get the body shell off without removing the exhaust really. And we all know not to do that too often, because every time you change the exhaust you want to be changing the gasket as well. So what has been done here is the shell's been cut over there to allow the shell to come freely off the unit. Now I will also be cutting this down here, making it more like a Baja shell to come off easily without this little flap. So maybe in this video I'll quickly do that, all depends on how long it takes to do this. So what do I need to change straight away? Lower suspension arms. Let's get some tools out here. This is a bit of a mix mash of tools. I use mainly these Fast Tracks tool sets because they contain all the bits you need, although some of the bigger cars do need some half decent tools to do the work. I can see this first one I'm looking at taking out is already bigger than what needs to be. There we go. Oh, that's a bit loose. Not that one. There we go. Another thing you might see me put in today, a little voltage meter. I've always wanted to put one of them on because you never know how much is in that battery when you get to it. Where did I put it? It's in. You never know how much power is in your battery, and with these cars you don't really want to be pulling the battery out every 5 seconds to do things like that, so we're doing that. Just pop this down here. It's a good thing to have whenever you're doing this stuff. It's a little bowl just to put all your spares. These are all loose. Whoops. Let's get them out before they fall. Come on. I don't want to. Little. Cups. Okay, so that's the shock tower's loose. Get this one off. Ooh, next one down. So a good bit to have one of these fast track toolkits. Well, this one's fast tracks. There are other different ones that do the work exactly the same. So never good to see bolts like that. I'll show you quickly as soon as I've got this one out. So just to show you, obviously it's had some fun. Still only one guy there with me. Now I've had the rear diff case off. The good thing about most of these models is they couple of bolts at the bottom usually pulls the whole steering or whole suspension bit out. I'm hoping that this is in fact just a little plug and play. It might be a bit difficult to get to that front cup. I'm going to hope I can get away with just removing a few bits here and there, because I don't really want to be stripping out all of the throttle servos. So some quite long screws there, going all the way in through to the top of the diff housing. So we should start seeing some separation here. And then number 5. Oh, there's 2 more at the back here. Oh no. They hold the steering arm in place, so I can understand why that one's a little bit controlled by bolts at the top too. So this particular model has 7 bolts holding the front diff down. It's not uncommon for 2 of them to be the upper deck, hold that in place, while it's also not uncommon for the front to be the front bolt to hold the front bumper in place. So different bolt there. This is having a field day with me here. Almost. Sorry, camera faux pas, getting in between the model and the camera, but as I said, we're here to learn. Thank you for joining me on my journey, and hopefully throughout all of this we can learn together. I haven't got a second screen set up at the moment, so I can't see any of your comments, but I will go back to these videos just in order to learn. So if you've got any helpful advice, anything that you've done, any issues, one thing I'm doing, so over here we've got the standard bar half front, which I've showed you. If I then move to this, some Proline trenches, sorry, these are KM Racing, just gives you a lot more grip. You can see how this one over here will really struggle when I put the 4-wheel drive down. because there's absolutely no grip. They're made for controlling the car on the slide when the power is down. However, these should help me get some of that power down onto the road. I will look at change the tires into possibly something like a Hostile MX. Although something I've seen recently which is really nice is the Mad Max big grip tires. So watch this space, you might see them. I also quite liked the carbon fiber alloys on these ones. Nice strong bead locks. Hopefully that will give me some added power onto the road. I do say a lot because I'm thinking as we go. None of this is scripted. I don't do this full time, but I do like my cars, so that's that one out the way. C-clips. Oh, how I hate a C-clip. So. What do I have here? Let's first get. I'm going to try and get this steering linkage out. What that'll help me do is pull the whole diff free from the car, give me a little bit more space to work on that cup on the inside when I put the four-wheel drive in. So put that one there. So one steering linkage off. Now, one thing I have seen recently, a lot of the aftermarket parts for these cars as in upgrades are usually symmetric steering. Just checking if there's any more bolts in there because it's not coming free as nice. There we go. I need a Phillips. Okay, so there's a little pin that holds from the diff into the chassis. That just helps it from not slipping around, puts less strain on your bolts. So all I'm doing is just releasing this upper deck, and by releasing the upper deck I'm just giving a little bit of air underneath to allow me to pick this up. So there we go. So you can see what I did here. Completely snapped that pin there out, and then, as I said in the previous video, you've got these, or in the previous segment, you've got these little pieces here that just block off the suspension. So everywhere the four-wheel drive would want to come through, you've got these little lugs. These little lugs to keep them in place. So what I'll be doing now is quickly stripping out these 3 screws there, these 4 screws over here, pulling out all the C-pins because I need to get these suspension arms out of the way. So let's do that. Don't do that. C-clip over there. Now, I am not a fan of C-clips, especially, oh, that one came out quite easy, especially because they're notoriously difficult to put back on. So, I have the top half of the right suspension over there. I'm going to try and keep this in the way it is currently, apart from replacing that lower bit there. Wow, that's angry in there. That's very angry in there. Like that. It looks so inside you've got a little hub carrier that in this case seems to be moving, so I'm going to try and move that back, see what we can do about getting that back up and running. That's not moving at all. Doodah, doodah. That's not moving at all. Doodah, doodah, dee. So let's see if I can pull it out without undoing that screw. Sometimes it's better to just fight the devil you know. So if you don't have to remove it, don't remove it. So it came off without removing it, so I'm quite happy about that one. I might not have mentioned it before, but you will see that although this is called the FS Racing 30cc 1/5 scale, after a little bit of research, I say a little bit of research, quite a lot of research, I found that in fact the FS Racing 30cc is exactly the same model, although they might not want to say it, as the really Carbon Fighter 3. So a lot of these parts you would see is actually really, and they're available from Conrad in Germany. So just be aware that if you can't find your parts that you need, do a little bit of digging, and you should find the Carbon Fighter is your next port of call. Obviously I've loosened this, and I'm hoping that I can tighten it back in the same place. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my hub carrier in here first, and that way I can put some pressure on that, because that will hold the bottom piece from moving. And this is the fun part, trying to figure out what size that hex is in there. Each manufacturer likes a different size. It's finding the one that your manufacturer deemed is the one that it wanted to use. What I found, your wheels actually offer you the best leverage, so you can actually hold on to the wheel and just undo that pin. It works for most models using your wheel as some leverage. undo that bolt however much you need to get the pin free. I don't know how far this one's going to, I have to pull it all the way out because I'm replacing the hub. So it's a little hex screw in there. There we go. With that out, the pin should push right out. Again, this is one of those points where you might find a hammer or something similar does the job. It is definitely free. I just don't want to damage any of my threads because I'm having that problem with my DHK at the moment, is trying to get the threads free. Let's see what I can do here. Let's see, maybe I can put that's not working for me. There we go, I've got some movement now. That's good. We have life. So hub should pop straight out as it does. Inside here. So just taking the pin out over there, and out comes the the front wheel securing pin. Something fell, I'm pretty sure. Ah, just some spacing washers over there. Fell. Well, seeing that they came out from, there's nothing left on the pin, I would say these came from the outside. So let's see what I can do about getting one of these new CVDs fitted. Oh, like a glove, straight in, all the way through. Put some of that spacers back. Call all three. Pop the hub back on. Does it line up? Ah, straight in like a glove. Just quickly get a spot of Loctite. Because the last thing I want to do is one of these to come out. Where is that? There's my Loctite. My Loctite should be somewhere in there. Now, for the sake of a better hobby, don't do this. I built myself this this toolbox or bits box. Works really well, apart from you can't see anything. So I do have a spot of Loctite. So this one is blue. I've not really found out what the difference is between the two, although I did see it mentioned the other day. Blue is for stronghold, red is for high heat, or it might be other way around. I'm not going to be too fussed. All I'm going to suggest is that you make sure you put it on there, because the last thing you want is these particular bolts coming out. That pin is held in place by your hex nut at the back of the rim, so it's not the end of the world if it doesn't go on properly, or not on properly, if it doesn't isn't in there. However, it just gives you that little bit of peace of mind later on that you've done what you could to stop it from happening. So, new CVD in there. Always love a new part. New lower suspension arm. Again, I like motivating my parts. So I'm just going to try and push you on without causing too much damage to that part. It's not going on. Good. Almost had a mild panic there. Tell you what, I'm going to put the old piece in there, and then I can whack the old piece as hard as I need to get that in. It's not going. Clipped in place. It feels quite tough in there actually, to be honest, so that's that bit. Now to remove the shock from this one. Where's my... So everything on the FS seems to be quite chunky screws. I'm not using many of the smaller screwdrivers that I usually use, so this one here is the 3mm, and I think it's 2.5mm I used for the internal bit on the wheel. But all in all, quite chunky screws really for what they are. Come out wherever you are. So just checking these bits to make sure there's no damage to them. There seems to be a little holder in there. That can go there. So officially I am done with this piece, apart from needing to get that pin out. I should be done with that bit. I just quickly push through this. That's the swivel in. Now, which side had the... No, that side? Is it that side? No. I guess it's that one. Oh, will I be able to push it through? It's also something you have to just bear in mind while you're doing this, is will you be able to push things through and pull them out. And dog bones love sneaking into places. There we go. Just a little piece there stuck in the way. Come on. Push that through. Now these are nylock nuts at the back, so that's why I'm not putting any thread lock on there. It's not needed. But there we have it. A new, or well, replaced front bit. And then get that one. So that's that one sorted. Let's pull this C-clip out of the end here, so I can get that lower arm fitted to the new suspension box. So new lower bit here. Yeah, let's get this right. Yep, that goes in through there, in there. C-clip in place. So that's side number one done for us. Do I need to replace? Let's just check this bit here for any damage, because if I don't need to replace stuff, I'm not going to, because it's I don't want to say pointless. It's extra work that's not needed, and the fact that it's not needed gives me a spare part later on. If I were to break one again, I can just swap them out. They are proportional, so they can go either way. I didn't pull that grub screw out all the way. I should really, because it allows me to put thread lock on when I'm done. That one came out a little bit easier than the other side. Heads. So again, keep those spacers in there. The other front roller. Now I will keep them, and the reason for keeping them is, number one, I don't know if this is the right kit. I'm hoping it is. I'm crossing all fingers and everything to make sure it is. Something tells me that that drive shaft is going to run through the shock tower. Indeed. So So there's 3 spaces, just making sure they're all in place. I will have to pull the other one off, having now known, or now know that they actually are held in place through the shock tower. Just a little bit of thread sealer on there. You can use too much, so I don't want to be doing that. That's in place. Locate that in the hub. Again, the wheels just being put on there to give me some leverage. Hex hubs are incredibly difficult to work on if you don't have the wheel. It's just the easiest way to hold on to them. Yeah. So that one's nice and tight in there, wheel off. And now what I have here is the complete right hand side. Now this one's snapped off, so I have to just make sure I have the right pins here. It does look like that's the wrong pin, that's a top pin. Where did I put my... Is it in my toolbox? There we go. It's in my toolbox, so you can see, snap that bit off there. Always good. Pop these bits into places like that. Just makes more difficult to lose in the long run. So, I have bought a whole pack of C-clips. Again, good thing to have with you. You can never have too many. So, the question is, how do I get, maybe if I'm, you know what, I'll just take the shock off. It's quite easy to take the shock off. Quite the way I wanted it to come off, but it works for me. That ball joint for the shock didn't locate properly into the lower suspension arm, so what I'm just doing is locating that ball joint first. Long nose pliers. Almost forgot the shock again, the drive shaft again, but I trust. Does that not want to come out? That's gone in nicely now. Now all I need is the little nut that was at the other end. Kingdom for a little nut. Where did it go? Any of you see it? I have the spanner that I used. I have a little nuts and bolts drawer. Find it. There we go. And what I'm hoping is that I've got another. Yeah, that will look too small. Okay, let's get back to that one. There it is. Helpful note to self: next time you set up, don't use a holy towel. Things can fall in there and get lost. So what do we have here? So what we got now is the new diff housing, both front CVDs installed. Let's see, next step would be throwing the actual diff in place. Okay. So I don't know if you can see, but there's a little cutaway here on the diff, on the base plate for the motor. That's there so that the pinion gear doesn't scrape in there. So if ever you're replacing a diff and worried about which way to put it in, usually either the diff case will have a groove in it on the side that you need to have it, or the actual base plate. Sometimes I've seen some models that have a hole cut out of it that actually leaves this so it's not greased. So just be aware of that when you're putting yours back together. So just for now, dropping the diff in there. It rolls freely. That's fine. Then the pinion gear. Either I think it's called. I think this is the pinion gear, and that one there is the crown wheel. So my apologies if I got that one wrong way around. But we paste that in the front diff. Just double checking. Ooh, I had a comment from someone. 54 minutes, guys. I know this video is incredibly long, but it's kind of there to try and help everyone do better with their own models. Now, when it comes to greasing the inside of diffs, I tend to use a silicone-based grease. Be aware that you can change the thickness of the grease inside your diffs. Now, this is not a completely enclosed unit, so I don't want to go nuts with it because it'll just seep out the bottom if any of the screws are loose. So all I'm going to do is just a little bit of Teflon grease sorry, it's not silicone, Teflon grease. I bought this from Halfords. It's just bike grease, mainly because it's waterproof and works really well for this application. So just a little bit of Teflon grease all the way along that pinion gear, and then the crown wheel as well. That popping noise you're hearing is just the grease coming out. Now that's for wear and tear. I'm not going to lie to you, all I want to protect here is wear and tear. Too much will just make a mess when I come to repair the bit. Too little will get lots of heat in there. So really all I'm trying to do is minimize that. What I'm going to do quickly before I pop this case on is I'm going to get these shock towers taken off. Just because it's easier to fit it while it's in my hand rather than having to pick up the entire front suspension. Do it that way. I'm going to be removing the air filter as well, because I can notice from looking here, I can notice that there's two cutaways inside the top instrument brace, and that will help me, that's the 4 screws, that will help me to just put in that front cup and secure that in place. I'm not going to stand here and pretend that I'm the best at doing this. I'm self-taught as well. So if any of you watching are kids, I learned to do this the same way you did, getting my hands dirty, watching little videos, and really just not taking no for an answer. I have got a mechanical engineering background, so I have worked on full-size cars before. I've worked on go-karts, bikes, motorbikes, lawnmowers, and that's what I really love about these 1/5 scale motors. They are so versatile, and just about all of them have the same dynamic. The parts might look slightly different, but the way they bolt together is in essence exactly the same. And if you can fix a little nitro motor, you can fix this. If you can fix this, you can fix your cars and home. It is really as straightforward as that, because they're all roughly the same. Now, I've put the shock towers on there, secured them in place, just inspecting these shock towers. There's no cracks in them, so I'm good. Even though I've had an accident, they've survived. And we're going to try and place this now. I just have to make sure. There's these little grommets. I've seen them on some other cars. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to move the top half of the shock either to the left or to the right, or to the front or to the back, and that just changes the camber of your steering. So when you're at full lock, your steering's either, or your wheels are either upright or they lean slightly in. We'll see how these fit in. Just locate them, the diff housing in place. Pop the shock where it needs to sit, and then see. Okay, now these are by default set up to be on the back, so I'm going to leave it there. I can't. Can I move it? issue here where the lower dog bone wasn't straight, so it wouldn't allow the lateral movement I needed there. So as I said, this one's set up to be at the back, so I'll just leave it there. Last thing I want to do is be rocking the boat in through the back. Now I did lose some C-clips in this accident, so I'm not going to lie and say I have to quickly get some new ones. Why does that not want to go through? There we go, that's through. That's through. And on the other side, where'd my little spacer go? There it is. And on the other side. So again, locate your dog bone first. I've done this many a times where I've failed to locate the dog bone, and when I do that, okay. One thing I have immediately noticed here, guys, is there is a direction this can go on. So So, as I said, by swapping the angle, these are offset on the rear wheel carrier. So by flipping them round, it makes them either facing straight or leans them ever so slightly. So I just need to quickly pull that one out. So all I'm doing here is I'm just swapping that one over just to get a slightly better angle on that diff housing. So that, get my new C-clips out. Two of them. Like I said, I did find two of the C-clips that day after the accident, but they were quite badly destroyed, so don't really want to be replacing broken parts with more broken parts. So C-clip down. Can you see? Sorry, I'm standing there doing some work and can't really see me. So let's pull this way. Up onto the. Let's get it to its final resting place. That way you can see. So I've pushed the locking pin through. That locking pin has a C-clip on it. There seems to be a bit of play in that C-clip, so I think that could be the reason why it went, why I destroyed the C-clip so badly in the accident, because there's a little bit of play there, and with play means some movement. So last thing, let's get these shock towers back in place. So that one goes in there. It was in through the top. Now guys, when you're replacing your shocks, they play a vital role in the setting of your model. So you don't really want to just whack it into any hole. Try and either put it into the holes you got it out from, as it does change a lot to the geometry of your truck. If you pop it back in the wrong hole, it could make your model likely to roll often. So the more upright your shock is, the stronger it is, and therefore you don't have as much roll in the corners. And if you don't have rolls in the corner, the weight of your model will push you over the edge. So please look into that when you're replacing your shock towers or shocks. Obviously the further out or the more angled you are, or the flatter your shock is, the better travel you're going to, or the better suspension you're going to get. That's why if you look at some of the Traxxas models, they actually put the suspension flat, almost disjointed from the wheels, through various little elbow pieces. They actually put the shock lateral with the car. And what that does is it gives you the maximum amount of travel possible on the wheels. And with the maximum amount of travel is the most roll. Most roll gives you the better performance in the corners, which is what we're after really. We want that performance in the corners, because it behaves better. So you've just seen me there to show you. By moving here, you will have movement on the wheels, movement on, sorry, let me get it that way, that side. You can see it's moving all the way along. Okay, so front suspension or front dog bones all done. Whoopsie, I forgot the whole thing. I was treating it as if it was a fully assembled bit, but sorry, the diff isn't fully secured down yet, so we'll get to that part when we put it all in. But for all intents and purposes, that bit is done. So I'm going to set that to the side, get rid of all of these damaged bits, because now what I'm looking at doing is getting that dog bone in place. That'll give me my drive. I have someone at the door. Give me a second. Hiya. Thanks for coming to local accommodation. I'm a bit busy right now. Fair enough. Can I just leave you something to read? I've got them. It's Watchtower, isn't it? Yes, I've got them. Thank you very much. Cheers, guys. Sorry, just a guest at the door. Can't say welcome, but at the end of the day, someone has to do their job. So as I said before, I'm going to pull the air filter off because I noticed through there I've got a little space I could potentially use to install this C-cup. So by the looks of it, there's already Loctite on this part. I'm going to give it another drop because that's one part I really don't want to get to go loose. It's right in the middle of the car, although I can immediately notice it's got hex nuts. The cup's actually got a hex on it, so I'm guessing that's going to be nice and solid in there. I just need to try and get it there. So how do we do this? That's a solid piece. That's a solid piece. Battery box is solid. Okay, I think the best way for me to do it is to remove the steering servo, and now what that will do for me is give me a nice little hole through into I find these stubby screwdrivers really good. This one's broken though, it's lost its little hook to hold on to the tools. But these stubby screwdrivers, if you find them, they're at your local petrol garage or your local hobby store. And all it is they usually have a nice shallow shallow Phillips end on the one side. That just allows you to get into these odd screws that don't like moving really anywhere. Oops. Oh, loads of notification. Got a stubby screw. I don't know if you're watching, Phil. Shout out. But we're at the final parts of this repair. We're getting the hex hubs in there. Oh no! I've dropped my stubby screwdriver and the screw. Ah, damn. Shout out to whoever invented the magnetic screwdriver. So if any of you are watching this later on and you're not live with me today, this is the four-wheel drive upgrade for the FS Racing 30cc. I've built, as you can see, you might want to skip through some of them, but we've rebuilt the diff at the front. I did have an accident, so I thought while I'm at it, I might as well just do the repair. I've just removed the servo. You could potentially put this in place by removing all the bits. However, I don't fancy completely pulling my car apart just to put a little cup in there. Wow. Sorry guys, I just need to try and move the engine so that I can get that hub in there, or that screw in there. Like I said, a little bit of Loctite, secure that in place. There we go, Bob. So I used the dog bone to hold it in place. Always a good thing, use the parts that came with it because they're made to fit in there. There's lots of metal on here. Maybe on another day when I strip this all out again, I might want to put some O-rings or where's that screw? That fell. Might want to put some O-rings in there. They do help in the long run, just putting an O-ring in there. So that one was like that. There we go. So that's the servo back in place. Somehow I think I've lost the little rubber bit. Oh no, sorry. Rubber bits in my hand. So servo's back in place. So you've seen me put the cup in there. Quite a fiddly thing. Not as fiddly as a screwdriver though. each one of them seem to have a little, each one of them have a little rubber shock absorbing boot, just to give a little bit of protection from the vibration, but also to stop your screw from breaking off that little servo arms. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to say I don't know if there's going to be enough time in this video to fit the kill switch. Oh, we'll see. And the main reason for that is not because the kill switch is difficult to install, but it's more the kill switch has a little wire that has to be traced through the car in such a way that it doesn't catch any of the moving bits. So the easiest bit would be to do is leave the radio cable straight and then try and hide the rest of the cable. I can tell you I've bought the Volt 4300 mAh battery pack for this car. It works fantastic. The only problem with it is big. So where I could potentially have connected too far. Where I could potentially have connected the kill switch and placed it inside the battery box. The standard, or the battery I got with it when I bought it, was way too small. But where I could have potentially in the past done that, I can't do it now because I just don't have the space in there. So you've got the receiver box over here, the battery box over there. I might be able to squeeze that kill switch, if not squeeze it in there, at least secure it somewhere where I can visibly see it, because that's very important, being able to see your kill switch, because there's status LEDs on there. So let's move on to the next step, locating this dog bone. That's always a problem with these models, because you have to line up something you can't always see. There we go. So that's in place, that's in place. That is sheer happiness. Happiness seems to be loneliness. Loneliness kills my love. How could you? So these two bolts are going to the steering again. As I said, the mechanics are exactly the same for a small nitro car or a large 1/5 scale like this. You over tighten that bolt that goes into the steering and it will affect how your steering can move. So these two bolts that hold the steering arms and the servo savers in place, don't over tighten them. That's why you've got 5 other bolts on this plate to do it for you. So you can tighten the one onto the upper deck or the instrument tray as much as you want to. You can tighten the 2 that go into the diff as much as you want to, but the last thing you want to do is over tighten the 2 that hold the servo savers in place, because as soon as you over tighten those 2, you'll lose your steering. And recently we've had some issues within the group where one of the nitro models wouldn't return to 0 once you'd steered, and that's your servo saver. A little crown looking piece just here, held in place by a spring. If it's over tightened, the servo horn doesn't move, but your steering will continue to, or at least look to function as normal. I had the right one in there. So what I'm doing now is securing the first of my diff bolts. Especially the two that hold together the servo plate, because that's going to be the ones that are the most important for now, especially for testing purposes. So we were discussing yesterday, in the group, we were discussing the disc brake upgrades for the Baja and the usefulness of it. Now, most of you will know the Baja is a rear-wheel drive only car like this one was, which means there is no braking on the front wheels, which means you're likely to oversteer / power slide, depending on what you want to call it, more often than not. Is losing control. It's just a controlled way of losing control. So